For our inaugural webinar, we have David Kinywa of Mjenzi Cloud taking us through a cybersecurity awareness webinar. I will let him introduce himself and the topic before taking us through his presentation. Feel free to ask questions in the chat, which we are both monitoring and shall be responded to as they come through. Asanteni sana. Take it away, Bwana David.
Thank you. Asante sana, Eric. My name is Kinywa, as Eric has said. I went to the Alliance High School. And I'm pretty sure it's going to be an enjoyable 45 minutes or so. So the way that I envision to take this is I'll flick through some simple slides and I'll talk through it. But the purpose of this is to try and provide some information about how you can increase your awareness on safety online, cybersecurity, as we like to call it. And this is really targeted for everybody. So not just the technical people, but anybody that has access to the internet, anybody that perhaps has a child, perhaps anybody that would like to learn a little bit more. And some topics you might think are mundane, but they affect some of us. And I had the privilege of asking a question before on whether you've ever had a cyber attack, and I have had some really good responses back. And some of the responses are actually very interesting, and I won't obviously mention anyone's name for obvious reasons. But we've had someone say that they had their bank account actually accessed. Somebody had a fraud happen on them. That happens. Someone's phone got hacked. We got somebody that has got a message on their phone and they clicked onto it, and then it locked them out of social media. That's quite advanced. I've seen it happen before. But someone said, the usual, spamming the usual SMS. And I've actually had an incident as well happen to myself. And this is interesting because, I think I know, tech, and I think I've been in the industry, but I was working for this company in the treasury department, and I was involved with, approving and looking at, invoices as they come through. And because, the corporate treasury for this company, is the one that is responsible for paying and, and checking that payments are done and made. So we had a system which automatically checks invoices, but it so happens that sometimes, the system doesn't pick up an invoice for payment. So it's up to the person, the people. It just happened to be me that time. So I picked on this invoice, which looked like a real invoice, and it happened to be a malware PDF attached to an email, which looked just legitimate. It came from a company that I knew. So we're going to talk a few, in a few minutes about what that looks like, and because you might think it's mundane, but it's actually quite common, and it actually happens to the best of us. So welcome, and I'll have all your emails anyway, so I'll share the slides. There's a bunch of resources in the slides as well, some links which you can have a look at. There's some interesting resources which you might actually find useful as well. It's an interesting topic. You've had things about this topic, but it's good to always try and refresh yourselves, and you can learn a few things or two. So now we're gonna go through a question, and I think Eric, you've seen this, so don't answer. But I just want to start by asking just a random, a common question. Can you find the mistake here? And you have access to some comments. So can you spot the mistake? And can you type where you can find with this link? If you can find the mistake here, can you please write the comment? I'll just pause here for 2 minutes so people can type in where they think they can spot the mistake with this link. It's a common issue, which you might not notice if you don't pay attention. So Bree, I've seen you've asked a question. Can you kindly talk to us about the technique where people send you a link and access your entire phone? So it's a common problem. It's not very common, but it's a very complicated way of doing it. So they can actually get access to your phone with a routing. So they can get access to your phone if you click onto just some random links. So that actually happens. So I'll be very careful when you see an SMS coming from somebody and you click onto it. So we can talk about that later. But Jeff says the space between the slashes, a good attempt, but no. Can I have a few more people attempt? That's not the correct answer, Jeff. There's just one mistake here. I haven't put too many, just one. I'll wait 1 minute for somebody else to type something. There might be a lag on the typing, but anybody else? I'm sure there's a few people on there. Can't tell how many people you are, but if there's nobody else typing anything, so the mistake here was that I have put in two words. THE is repeated twice, as you can see. Can you find the mistake? Can you find the mistake? So this is a common technique used by people that are trying to pass something by you. So you can clearly see that, I've repeated the word THE twice. Can you find the mistake? Whereas obviously you're focusing on looking at the mistake here, and there is no mistake here. So this is correct. This is how www.instagram.com would appear if you're typing it on a website, on a web page, on a link. So this is the correct link, but the issue is I have made you, look away from here and made you focus on this link, whereas the issue was, there's been something here. So this introduces what, is typically referred to as social engineering. And this is simply the art of people trying to distract you, and then they're trying to misdirect you. So they're trying to take attention away from you, and they're trying to draw your attention somewhere else so that, they can do something else. And often there's various ways that this can happen. And social engineering tricks are very common. Luchiri, nimekupata. Exactly. So that's exactly right. And Betty, the slashes look too slanted. No, that wasn't the issue. So the issue was that I was able to distract you and misdirect you from where the issue was into something else. So typically, it would happen in various ways. And this is social engineering. So social engineering is the idea that they take attention from where you're focusing on onto something else. So commonly, you would see something like smishing, baiting. We'll talk about some of these things in more detail, but you've seen everybody talking about phishing. So phishing is just the art of faking something and then doing the other thing. So vishing is where someone can actually send you a voice call, pretending to be someone else. So this is these are different types of attacks. But social engineering is interesting because it's got an aspect of your personal information in some cases. So some people might know who you are, they might know who you work for, they might know where you work. And so they're always trying to understand you a little bit more so they can personalize the attack. That's why we call it social. And it's really, really common in social media too. So I'm going to go through some of this just to get you to be aware of what these are, because you might have seen them and you're probably sitting on a bunch of them on your phones right now. If you open your email, you'll see a whole bunch of stuff that's baiting you and trying to just catch you. So phishing is a very common scamming tool. They want you to think entrust something in order to make you do something. I get this maybe once a week when people send messages saying, they are somebody that you work with and they want you to do a trip for them. You should really not respond. And commonly, they typically, send. They actually pretend to be someone so you should just be really careful, careful. So there's 7 types of these scams, and there's quite a few of them, and they keep increasing actually, and they keep getting smarter. You've all heard of the Nigerian princess anyway. So I'll go through a few of these. So the first one is obviously email phishing. It's very common. The way to identify this is to really just take a second to look at the email sender, where the email is coming from. And typically, you're not going to get an email from Gmail looking like this. Gmail doesn't send using Gmail accounts. Their official email is google.com. So you should just be really careful. And often somebody would try to actually access your Google account sometimes, and it would appear like this. So there's often people that are trying to pass off as somebody or a reputable company like Google or Amazon or others. So critically, they try and make you, think that there's something wrong. They're trying to get you to click on here. So trying to think this looks like a legitimate email from Google, but it's actually not. So what they're trying to do is to get you to click here. So, and they put an alert, and you would definitely not want to click there. So it's a little bit hard because you have to be really aware of this. So what I would do is, if you haven't had an activity on Google, for instance, or any of your accounts, you would be hard pressed to press this one, please. So just make sure that, if you haven't tried to access your accounts, you don't click on an email that has come through seeming to want to grant access to something that, you have an account with. So the second one is spear phishing. So this is when they actually know you. So this happens to me a lot. So they pretend to be your boss. They pretend to be somebody and you can quickly actually click onto it or respond. And what they will do is they'll try and get more information from you. So they pass off for someone very familiar. They send a very personalized message in some cases. Often in my company happens to be somebody wants to run an errand on behalf of somebody else, which is very fishy. So just don't. So this is a common one too, smishing, where they send an SMS. So somebody asked a question, how does that work? So typically, when you sign up to things on your phone, like, you sign up for a dentist, I'm not saying don't sign up to anyone, but just be careful who you're giving your SMS to. Don't just give your SMS out, because typically people might take your contacts and they would sometimes steal those contacts and they would use it. So we get some messages from a lot of tolling companies here, and they always really get people every week. So they send a message claiming that you've used this toll road, so you need to pay this amount of money, because they know that that's typically how people do it. So again, just don't be very quick to click on an SMS that comes through. People should know better than to just send this to you, and you can always call. So I would be careful not to click on a URL, especially. So URLs are dangerous. So when I say URL, I mean these links here. So they're really dangerous because they often mask, and they often lead you to somewhere else, and they always obviously hide where they actually belong. So this would be a very nasty place, one of those destinations which you don't want to click to. So yes, somebody asked about how they do this. So on the phones, there's a way to actually crack into your phone using some really complicated software. So you would just be careful not to click onto them. So what they would do is they would actually try and break your phone. But it's not very common, but it happens. So Google search. So this is a common one too. You've seen it before. When you search on Google, it appears to have been actually an ad, but it's not actually an ad. It's a scam site. So you're searching for something. It brings a result on top there. It pretends basically to be the website you're looking for. It will actually mask itself to be the website you're looking for. So always be careful. And the way to see if it's an issue is it would often appear this way. So you can see the screen. So it's hard to distinguish because it will have the correct searched item. So you're looking for Venmo. Venmo, the correct app is here, but then here, it will still say Venmo, but if you look closely, so you'll see that it's actually not Venmo. It's leading you to a form or a different site. So just be really, really careful when you're doing these things. And you can look at it today and have a look and see. If you search for something else will pop up, but just be careful not to click into it straight away. And I would avoid the first two results because they're often always the same. They're often always scammers trying to get you to click into their link because they know you're searching for that result. So this is another common one. Obviously, everybody here should have received this if you have social media accounts. Often you get asked to add somebody who's already your friend. So they would impersonate somebody and they would ask you to add them back. So just pretend, just ring them back. Just ask them, hey, have you got a new account? Did you lose your account or something? Because it could be legitimate. So I would say make sure that you don't just add anybody. And I would also advise perhaps go into your contacts and try and refresh your list and see if there's anybody that you don't actually know. Because there's no point having people that you don't actually know or have any affiliation with on your social media, because they could just be bots. And a bot is just an automatic system that stays on there, and it'll follow you and it'll try and get your information for their own purposes. So the bots are quite common these days, especially on Twitter, which is now X. So bots are automatic accounts. They've tried to remove them, but they can never remove all of them. So ideally, you just want to be careful on who you're adding, who's in your friends list on these social media sites, because it's probably a fake account if it's got very few users. It's just sitting there. You should probably not let it sit there because it's got access to your information. Tukowengi. Yes, Morioki. Someone said Tukowengi. So another interesting one, which I haven't seen for a while, is a QR code scam. So you're just chilling, you're just thinking this is just a normal QR code. Don't just scan any QR code. Some QR codes are actually not legit, and they can perhaps lead you to funny places. It could just be a fake website as well. So if you want to buy something, just make sure you know where you're going to buy whatever you want to buy. So because they would pretend and they would make a fake site that looks exactly like where you're trying to get to. So if it's a pizza shop, maybe you don't really want to do that with a QR code. I would advise against scanning any QR code just randomly. You can scan it, but don't click into it. But I would advise against it anyway, because often it might just be fake. It could be fake. So you've seen this one before. You've been called from Kamete. I don't know how they get to randomize. So they probably randomize people's numbers and they just ring you from prison. You've probably come across this one. This happens to me, obviously, as well. I get voice phishing where they're trying to actually call you and trying to claim that they know you or they know your account information, and they want to try and get some information from you. Maybe just ignore um, and often it would actually come from, and it would impersonate the company. In most cases, it would actually impersonate the company. So you would be hard pressed, to answer it. But as soon as you sort of recognize that you're being asked for information, I will just hang up the phone. So the way to protect yourself, just don't be emotional about these things. Just think a little bit. Obviously, you're busy at work. You see an email coming through. I got caught. I just clicked into it, and it affected my computer. So it locked my computer down in what is called malware, and it was asking us to pay for some ransom. It's ransomware, malware, similar things. So I would just be careful. Check the email address. You should enable multi-factor authentication if you can. So this is where we have 2 steps to verifying entry into a website or an account. So you have your SMS perhaps, or an email, or sometimes they do SMS. So I would advise, if a website or a site that you're a member of has multi-factor authentication, that you actually enable it and you use it. I've seen people actually ignoring that, but it's very useful, especially if you have sensitive information like a banking app. Most banks should have enforced this one and allow you to multi-factor authenticate. So look at the style of the message. If it's fishy, just don't do it. Ask questions, call to verify if you know someone and they're sending you funny things. Yeah. So this is another way you can protect yourself. Passwords are an interesting area and a topic. And I know you probably have had this before. I would advise you to have a strong password. It's very, very common issue that people often sit there and they try to hack and crack your accounts. As soon as somebody has got your email address, and they can get your email address pretty easily, they can guess your email address because typically it's a combination of your name and some words and some letters. And so people that are trying to hack, they can spend time to actually do it using systems. So they can connect your account into their softwares, and they can try and hack your accounts. So if you just have 7 characters, it would take them a minute to hack into it. So just be careful. If somebody actually wanted to hack you and trying to crack your password, it would be so much easier if it's less than 7 characters. So most websites and most accounts out there have tried to enforce longer characters for this reason only. It would take 3 to 4 days if it's 9 characters. It would take 7 months for someone to actually attempt to crack your password. And if it's 12 characters, it takes longer. Mathematically, the permutations are too many. So you should just be the way to best do this is to have what we call passphrases. And the way to do this is to use a phrase as opposed to just a word and a combination of letters. So the reason is it's hard to guess passphrases as opposed to just your common passwords. So a passphrase shouldn't have your birthday. This is something that you've had before. So I'm not gonna belabor the point, but unfortunately there's been so many instances of accounts being hacked. I'm hoping the network is still pretty good. If it's pretty good, just say good. 11 billion accounts were stolen from hacked sites and apps. This is still fresh. This is from last year. So if you think about this, that's a lot of passwords. So you can actually go onto this website. I'll send you the links, the presentation afterwards. But if you go to the website, have I been pwned? So with a P as opposed to an O. Have I been owned.com has got information on any leaked email. So if you think your account, if you're not sure, I would just check. I checked my email and I found that there has been about 6 leaks, that data leaks that have been linked and have caused my information, my email, to be out there. So if you find that your email address has been compromised too many times, I would try and change your email address. So this is a website. It's commonly available out there. I would say, if you can, have a look at this. It's worth having a look. I'll share this. I'm gonna just try and show you if I can as we speak now. So it's basically saying, have I been owned? But they put a P. So I'm gonna share this screen and you should be able to see it. So if I put my password, I'm doing this live. So Kinyua at I'll put my personal password, my work email, but and I'll see if there's been instances where my email address has been in a data breach. Data breaches have become very common. So as you can see, there's been about currently there's about 800 websites that have been, currently, this is currently now. So there's about 800 websites that have been breached. So there's about 14 billion accounts that have been breached. There's about 115 pastes. So your account has been pasted somewhere. So there's been a whole bunch of breaches that have happened on these accounts since Facebook began. For instance, there's been 509 breaches onto Facebook accounts. So if you put your email here, it's a good idea to just check. So if I put mine, so I'll say that there's been 2 data breaches, but my password has not been, my email has not been entered anywhere else. So it's just been breached, and breaches occur. So I wouldn't fret too much if you find your email has been in many data breaches. But in some cases, if there's too many breaches on your email address, meaning that it's not necessarily you, but accounts that you have signed up with that email address have had their businesses hacked. So meaning that your email could have been leaked and your email is probably out there somewhere in the web somewhere. So it's an idea. If you find that there's so many breaches that have happened that your email address was involved in, then you should probably change it. So you see here, this Epic registration service has been leaked, has been hacked, and has been breached before, and my email was involved in that. So my email was somehow involved in this. So if I put a different password email, which I have access to, this one is worse. So it usually turns 8 data breaches. So there has been 8 data breaches that have happened, since this website began, collecting this data. And in those instances, there has been breaches. I know for one that Canva is a pretty common website. So Canva has been breached, and they were breached in 2019. It's a graphic design company which I actually use. So I actually, I changed my password. So the first thing I would recommend is, and Ticketek took. So Ticketek, this one is a ticket company. It's an Australian ticket company. I didn't even know this. So I haven't done this for a while, but this is in May, and I know that I have an account with this Ticketek company. So what I would actually do is I would change my password, because I know that this is a common breach, and it was a big breach. So 17.6 unique email addresses were breached. So the data may have been breached. So somebody out there has got my email. They don't really have anything else except the email for now, but what you would have seen if there has been instances where my password, my email has been used, is that it would say there's been pastes. So if you do this, and this is the website, if you see that your email has been pasted somewhere, I would just advise that you try and mitigate that. You try and maybe change your I would probably change your account. I mean, accounts are changeable. It's a bit harder for a corporate account to be changed, but for your personal accounts, it's a good thing to check if your email is just too much out there. And I wouldn't advise. So mine has been involved in 8 data breaches. They're pretty these are pretty common big breaches that have happened in the past, and a simple changing of your password should suffice. So somebody asked a question. So solutions like LastPass. So I'll talk about that. I have used that before. So let me just quickly go on. So there's ways to prevent this. So you should enable, obviously, as I said, we call it MFA, so multi-factor authentication. So this helps you protect your accounts. And then the most common multi-factor authentication, as I said, is SMS, but you also have Google with their own and Microsoft Authenticator. I used to use an USB key in a different company that I worked for. So they give you a key combination, which gives you a password, which you can then put in. That's not very common for a personal use, but the Microsoft ones and the Google ones are okay if you trust Google and Microsoft. That's if you trust them, but ultimately an SMS should be fine. So how to avoid getting hacked? Again, avoid using public Wi-Fi. So this is a common thing that has happened before, where people try and actually hack on public networks. So I would avoid, if you can avoid using public open networks, avoid them. It's so much easier to be exposed if you're on a network. So if you're on a network, I could try and actually access your phone right now if you're on my network, because it's just the way that security is done. So what they would do is they would try and hack and try and get into your system through the network. So if you can just be sure that you're connecting to your work Wi-Fi, that's fine. But if you're connecting on a cafe Wi-Fi, I'd be careful. So if you can use your mobile data, I would advise you to do that. So the solution for remembering passwords. So I have seen people that have saved an Excel file on their computers. I do that because I have so many passwords for testing systems, because that's what I do during the day. But I would advise that if you're doing that, you can encrypt that file. It's not advisable, but you should try and have a way of memorizing passwords. If you can't, there's the solutions like LastPass that allow you to generate hard passwords. The challenge with that, though, that I have seen some of those companies being hacked as well. So you just gotta be careful. It's a tricky one, because if LastPass is hacked, then what are you gonna do? So I would say if you can maintain a password account, there's obviously Google, the common browsers have got their password managers. I would be careful on retaining very important passwords on there, like your banking information. I would just resist that, because you don't want that. If your laptop is stolen, it's so easy to access your accounts that way. So remember, advisably, I'd advise you to have multi-factor authentication, meaning you have to have your phone with you or a way to access those accounts without just somebody going through into your account with just a password. Because remember, passwords can be hacked with systems. We have technology systems now that can actually sit there and try and guess your passwords. And I do that every day. So we call it penetration testing. So they can test and actually try and hack you. So the way to best do it is to make it harder for them. So make the password trickier. And I would advise against storing very important passwords. Surely you can remember your bank password off your head, if that's the case. So I would say if you forget your password, just create a new one. Thanks, Charlotte. So avoid public network. So ransomware, I talked about this one. So when criminals hack you, and I got hacked and I got attacked, and I had to give my laptop away. The laptop had to be destroyed because it was carrying financial information, which we don't want to be compromised. So how to avoid ransomware? Really common again. Just avoid random websites. Beware of phishing emails. As I said, don't use your company email for your personal stuff. People can easily get hacked. People can easily guess your personal stuff. Then, if for instance you have to, if you use the same password, it's not a good idea. It's definitely not a good idea. And don't do what I do. So I sometimes store, because I have a lot of passwords, but they're mostly test passwords on a spreadsheet. So I would avoid that. But yeah. So again, I would avoid these things. Charging, your phone. Don't plug USBs that you just see anywhere. I don't know why you would do that anyway. So just don't do that. So you've seen this as well. Actually, somebody has had this happen to them on somebody that has signed up to this forum. So this is really advisable. You should try and make sure that your bank account is secure enough, meaning, again, try multi-factor authenticating it, or just a very hard password. And often some companies are enforcing you to change your password every so often. So consider doing that if you can. So we're almost at the end, and then I'll have some questions, perhaps, if you have any. So if you have a question, just post it there. So again, I've talked about this before. You can avoid wire fraud. Don't take emails from Nigerian princes. It's a common annoying thing that keeps happening every now and then. I've had somebody send money to receive something, which is absurd. But unsuspecting people sometimes think that if you buy something, you should still send some more money to have it delivered. So, and that was quite unsuspecting of them. And they sent money to some people that they knew. So they social engineered, and they knew that somebody had bought something at a particular time, and they sent an email saying your item is on the way. Yet they actually knew what item was coming, and then they said, can you send us a little bit more money to actually release the goods? And they sent the money because it was actually correct. So the information was very correct. They had got the facts right. So hackers out there always try and get the facts as much as they can to the right thing. So call, verify, call, verify, call, verify. So if you're suspecting something, just call and verify. So there's some resources which I'll share. I'll share these ones on the. I'll send these slides along, so you can have a look. So there's some websites that have got some interesting, amazing resources. There's some really good resources for kids. So we haven't had much time to talk about this, but for kids, for parents that have kids, I would advise to do a few things like making sure that you're having some ways to control what's coming through your internet. And it's quite common nowadays to have these softwares. So if I'll send you a bit of a primer, which should have some information there. But it's a really, really advisable thing to try and limit what's coming through your internet. So it's a simple firewall software. Some of them are actually free and they're quite reliable. So what that would do is it would make sure that your kids are not getting access to fishy websites. They're not accessing porn that they shouldn't access, because it's a quite common issue with young people. Unfortunately, these websites are also quite prone to being hacker prone. And also remember, people ransomware also affects your machines. So although Microsoft and most people that use Microsoft has come a long way to make sure that they have their defenses up and running on your machines when you get them. You should still try and make sure that you're not clicking onto funny websites. Avoid clicking on banners. I know banners are trying to advertise, but just avoid clicking on banners. And unfortunately, kids don't know how to not click on banners, as you would know now, to avoid clicking on banners. So if you see fishy banners, just assume your kid is looking through this website and they click onto it. They would, inadvertently go onto websites that it shouldn't be accessing. So that's got some big implications. So salam, Tabitha. Salam. So there's some interesting facts. We went to Alliance, some of us, most of us. Some didn't, which is fine. But we have to end with a little bit of some facts, some data. And this was last year again. But out of all hacks that happened in that year, they were trying to just do a bit of research on why people actually hack. Why do people actually try and get information? One is obviously financial. They're trying to get a ransom. They're trying to get some money from you. So it happened for me. So they were trying to get some Bitcoins or whatever money they wanted for exchange of that. Unfortunately, if you pay this ransom, they would not necessarily always, return back your data or remove the virus. So you should not pay. You should try and always back up your data. So there's different ways to back up your information, and I would simply just use a physical backup if you can. I'm happy to take questions and help you just set up a physical backup. It's not, you don't have to pay anybody for that. So a physical backup is very easy to set up, but unfortunately, not everybody has got that set up. So there's some things you can do to protect yourself. And unfortunately, some of these things become really, expensive if you do lose the data. So what I would advise is, if your laptop has been ransom attacked, meaning you've clicked onto some websites, some PDF or something that has locked your machine. So we call it a BitLocker. So you should not really worry about paying anyone anything. You're not really gonna get your stuff back. So what you should try and always do is try and have your backup. And if you work for a company, you should try and make sure that they do have somebody asked a question, which is distracting, but make sure that you have backups running. So I'm happy to take your questions on how to do that yourselves without having to incur costs. So somebody's asking, is it safe to perpetually generate new passwords because you forget it? It's safe to keep generating passwords as long as they're secure. It's okay to do that. I've had sometimes people trying to reset my own accounts. So also watch out for that one. It's a really common one, actually. Somebody is trying to get you to change your password. So you don't actually necessarily know why that's happening. So what I would advise is just change it straight away, because often they're probably trying to get access within a window of time, or something could be not right. So if you haven't authorized a password change, then be worried. But I would advise that you should try and cycle your passwords every 6 months. So I have an account that forces me to change it every 3 months, which becomes a little bit painful. But again, What about a laptop where you never log out? Even if you don't log out, I'd advise that you set up a password for it. Because if you lose your password, your laptop, then anybody can access your data. So the first point of protection is to try and back up information. The reason you back up you back up your data is because if you lose your data, you can then recover it. So, and I would advise that you back it up on an external location. So you can just buy a hard drive now. They're not expensive. You buy a hard drive, a physical hard drive, and you can back up your most important information on there. So I can show you how to do this if you hit me up on email or on my phone number. So 27% were insider threats as well. So 26% of cyber attacks were political. You know, you can guess where those come from. And obviously trying to get an edge or trying to influence elections or do whatever they want to do. Competition is a big cause of people who are cyber attacking. Cyber warfare, obviously, people trying to actually, you know, get things to stop. And obviously angry users, so you'd be surprised. So and out of, you know, there's a whole bunch of motives here for different things. So, you know, educational services, it's probably more common that people are trying to do, you know, financial gain. But yeah, you can have a look at that. So that's the end of what I had. If you have any question, you can come through. I think we still have some time, but I can't see any more questions. So somebody asked, is it hard for non-tech to establish their own server? It's not very hard. I'm not sure if you mean to be able to back up things, but if you want to know a bit more about servers, this is the man to talk to. So talk to me, Bray. If you want a server, I can hook you up. But yeah, it's not too hard. And so I'm guessing your question was about servers. So typically, a server can host your information. You can have your backup on a backup server, but typically you don't have to worry about that. You can just get someone to help you set it up, or I could show you how to set it up yourself. I think that's me for now. Any questions that I missed on here? No. Eric, any questions that I missed on the other side?
Beautiful. No, I think you've gone through all the questions that were asked on chat. If there are any other questions, please post them. If not here, you can post them on on our WhatsApp group, and Bwana Kenya shall be on hand to answer them. We are truly grateful for this. Asante sana, Bwana Kenya. Looking at the time difference between us and you who go down under, we are truly, truly grateful that you're able to get this done for us. And with that, I shall bring this first session to a close. If that's it, I will call this to a close. Asanteni sana. This was born out of just a conversation on for real, and I'm very, very glad that it's finally a reality. Let's keep pushing forward. Let's have this going on and on. And for all of you, whatever your passion is, whatever your expertise is in whatever it is you're doing, feel free to reach out to me so that we can now schedule you for a future session. But before we go, Bitha has a question. Why would it be so difficult to block certain spammers such as LinkedIn?
It's very hard to block them because you don't control access. So LinkedIn, you know, is the one that can do it. But then it's very hard to tell if an account is a spamming account or not. So ideally, I would say you just have to do the work yourself to make sure that somebody messaging you is not a spammer. And unfortunately, you know, it happens commonly on the social media sites. LinkedIn a little bit less, but I would just be careful on who you have on your list of friends and connections, because often it's because of that your information and your name is appearing most of the time. So even on your social media, I would just insist, actually, just try and look at who you're friends with. If you don't know the person, just remove them. They're not coming back. Walienda. So, but if you notice that you have an issue with too much spamming, you can always message these companies like LinkedIn. They're quite responsive, actually. The LinkedIn team is actually quite responsive, and they might try and do something for your account if you're getting too much happening. But unfortunately, you can't block the spammers yourself. You know, it has to be a job that they do. Instagram is very common on spamming, because what they do is they will amass a whole bunch of people's, IDs, and it's so easy to do it because they will just they're guessing accounts, and so they're guessing accounts, and they just try and bunch people together and send you a link, and they ask you to do things like post things on their behalf. So you've seen those things, so just be careful. I would report those accounts as well, just to help out, because these companies rely on self-reporting to help their platforms. So if somebody's, if you keep getting this, just keep reporting them. Keep reporting them. It helps. So that's what I would say. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for this inaugural AHS-AGHS for real webinar. Sarap. Santeni sana.